Look down. Your palm. The cold mirror of your phone screen is reflecting a bare, lonely face. What are you waiting for? A signal? An invitation to be saved? Hopeless. A moment later, you scroll through the virtual world, a massive stage of the paradox of choice, where everyone seems to be enjoying life forever. And you know what's truly terrifying isn't that they're happy. It's that you start doubting yourself for not being like them. You see groups of people laughing, drinking, connecting, and something heavy, icy, unnamed presses down on your chest. That is the particular silence of someone cut off. Sometimes you don't say it out loud, but your body knows. It knows that emptiness isn't a lack of people, but a lack of something real, a place where you don't have to perform. Society doesn't just call that silence a symptom. They call it proof of your failure. It whispers that if you're alone, you're defective, that you failed the most basic human test, belonging to the group. They call you a loner, an outcast, an evolutionary mistake. And sometimes, a single word, outcast, is enough to make someone shrink inward, as if the sentence was passed long ago. But here's the pivotal thing you must carve into your memory about crowd psychology. They're not afraid that you're lonely. They're shaking because you're self-governed. Do you hear that? Not because you have no one, but because you don't need anyone in a way that unsettles them. That judgment doesn't come from compassion. It comes from primal fear and a hidden hunger for power. Machiavelli would say the crowd only feels safe when every individual is predictable and dependent on the system. They need you inside the group to keep the illusion of sameness alive. Because when one person dares to live by a different rhythm, the whole chorus goes off key, and they hate that feeling. By labeling the loner as a failure, they're performing a psychological defense. This is shadow projection. They're dumping their fear of difference and self-rule onto you. The person who keeps to themselves is a direct threat to how easily they can control things. And what they call weird is sometimes just unmanipulable. Quote dot. They want you to feel guilty, to fear isolation, because that's the only way they can drag you back into the circle and siphon your energy. Have you ever felt wrong just for wanting quiet, just for wanting to breathe in your own rhythm? They were completely wrong. Solitude isn't failure. Solitude is a prerequisite. It's a private laboratory where personal power and sharp vision are forged, uncontaminated by herd mentality. And if you've lived through enough collisions, you'll understand. There are things that only sprout in silence. That heaviness you feel isn't a malfunction. It's the weight of potential that hasn't been released. Maybe you're not weak. You just haven't named your strength correctly yet. What if I told you your solitude isn't a sign of social failure but a perfectly constructed defense mechanism? What if I told you that sometimes few friends isn't deprivation, it's selection? You aren't being cut off. You've pulled back. And sometimes pulling back is how the mind saves you from what drains you. The real reason you have few or no friends isn't because you lack emotional connection. It's because your behavioral psychology is set up to reject what's fake. It's a conscious choice, even if it's unconscious. You're protecting your precious mental energy from social transaction cost. You're not stingy. You just no longer want to pay for emptiness. Every social relationship has an unspoken purpose. People who chase friendships in bulk often aren't seeking companionship. They're seeking validation, seeking tools, or seeking a shield against their own insecurity. When you see through those masks, when you see through the fear and hidden hunger for power, the need for shallow interaction drops sharply. And when you no longer need to perform, you no longer have patience for meetups, just to have them. Quote dot. You can't tolerate meaningless small talk. That's because your cognitive system has become highly efficient, where all excess information is treated as interference. In other words, you're not cold. You're simply accustomed to depth. Your solitude is the result of an evolutionary psychological effect called the apex paradox. It sounds grand, but it really says one thing. The more you mature, the sharper you become, the clearer you get, the less you crave the crowd. This paradox asserts that when a creature becomes more specialized, more effective, and, most importantly, more dangerous to potential challengers, its social circle naturally shrinks. Here, understand dangerous as a psychological metaphor. Dangerous because you see what others try to hide. Dangerous because you're not easily led. Social bonding is a survival defense strategy for weaker individuals. For those with high self-sufficiency, maintaining a wide social network becomes a burden. It slows development. And sometimes you're not picky, you're simply moving faster than the crowd's tempo. If you're developing your shadow, integrating the powerful, aggressive, power-oriented parts of yourself that society forces you to hide, then you'll automatically drift away from people living inside collective illusion. When someone integrates their power, they realize group approval is a kind of chain. And then you see it clearly. Some invitations to fit in are really invitations to disappear. Look at the laws of nature. A flock of sheep trades personal freedom for protection from responsibility. A pride of lions lives by transactional alliance. But the tiger walks alone. Its solitude isn't incapacity. It's proof of absolute autonomy. And if you hear yourself in that image, you may understand why you feel exhausted, trying to belong, in places that aren't real. You're operating at a level where relying on others is only risk and distraction. You're at the peak, and at the peak there isn't room for a crowd. You're alone, but you're not controlled. And sometimes, that alone is a kind of peace many people never touch. If you're watching this part, it means you've lived your whole life slightly out of phase, an ongoing sense of alienness. You don't belong here, and the raw truth is, you were not designed to blend in. Have you ever sat in a room full of people and still felt like you were standing outside the door? That feeling isn't new. You're just brave enough to look it in the face now. That sense of being pushed to the margins isn't weakness. It's a sign of superior awareness, proof that your senses are collecting data from the world at a higher frequency. And when your frequency is higher, you can hear what others call invisible. You've tried to wear the social mask, persona, the convenient shell of normal, but it never fit. It slips off your face because your true nature, your untamed shadow, is too powerful to be hidden. This is the natural resistance of higher intelligence to the fear of isolation, the force that controls 99% of humanity. And maybe the part you're most tired of is the part that tried to fit for too long. Your suspicion is right. The way your brain processes information, recognizes patterns, and evaluates other people's hidden selfish motives is fundamentally different. You're not paranoid, you're sensitive, and that sensitivity sometimes saves you from more than you'll ever know. Today, we dissect 7 sharp evolutionary adaptations. They are survival tools refined through solitude. And as you hear each trait, don't rush to judge yourself. Just notice which line makes you nod in silence. Trait 1. Hyperacute Pattern Recognition, the Lie Detector. Most people walk through social interactions like sleepwalkers, living in self-deception. They need these social lies as a protective shield. And so they prioritize comfort over truth. But you are different. If your social circle is empty, it's not because you lack charm, it's because you've been given a lethal gift, hyperacute pattern recognition. Lethal here is a metaphor for sharpness, the kind that gives pretense nowhere to hide. Your brain isn't a mailbox receiving words. It's a surveillance device. It bypasses the prefrontal cortex, where language is processed, and goes straight to the amygdala, where intent, fear, and selfish motives live. You don't hear what people say. You analyze what they do and what they fail to conceal. And that's why you get tired, because you see too much in a single moment. You're not just watching, you're measuring. You track microexpressions, the flickers of facial muscle that reveal contempt or fear. You calculate their response latency, the tiny pause when their brain must stop to build a false story before presenting the performance. You don't do it on purpose. It's how your nervous system protects you. While others are busy exchanging surface-level banter, You're witnessing the battle between persona and the shadow in Carl Jung's framework. Every smile contains a hidden Machiavellian calculation. And sometimes, once you've seen that even once, you can never be innocent like before again. That clarity makes you dangerous. Your presence threatens the psychological order they've worked so hard to build. They'll call you too intense. What they really mean is, you're a mirror, and I hate my reflection in you. And you know what's ironic? You don't even have to do anything. Just being you is enough to make them uncomfortable. Your solitude is not loneliness. It's the price you pay for operational clarity. And clarity, sometimes, always comes with fewer people. Trait 2. Contempt for social noise. The depth addict. Mass social interaction, 90 of it, is entropy. It's noise. And noise doesn't just bore you, it drains you. Shallow conversations aren't politeness. They're collective defense mechanisms. A shell the majority builds to protect themselves from the fear of depth. They talk to fill space, not to exchange meaning. And sometimes, they fear silence more than they fear being wrong. If you have very few friends, that's evidence you possess a high need for cognition. Highly intelligent individuals can feel physical pain when forced into shallow dialogue. Small talk isn't social grace, it's theft. It steals your most valuable resources, time and mental energy. Have you ever left a hangout feeling empty and out of battery? The resistance you face, being labeled too heavy, isn't personal rejection. It's the instinctive self-defense of the collective ego. Your depth unintentionally exposes their shadow, the shallowness and knowledge gaps they've tried to hide. And no one likes having their emptiness revealed. You're a deep-sea diver in a world of shallow pools. This isolation isn't failure. It's strategic protection. And strategy sometimes means knowing where you belong and where you don't. Trait 3. Immune response to control the sovereign mind. Most friend groups aren't democracies. They're miniature tyrannies, tiny cults built on herd instinct. The goal isn't truth. The goal is minimizing the risk of being expelled. And the moment you differ, the group tries to bend you back into shape. And you are the disruption, the glitch in the matrix. You make the system reveal cracks it's always trying to conceal. When a group demands conformity, your brain doesn't register it as belonging. It triggers a threat response. Compliance feels like cognitive suffocation to you. And maybe you've done this before, quietly left. Not because you hated anyone, but because you couldn't breathe inside unwritten rules. This is reactance theory. When your autonomy is threatened, you don't yield. You retreat to the temple of your sovereign mind. And inside that temple, you finally hear your own voice clearly. Groups fear your difference for a very Machiavellian reason. Compliance confirms power. When you refuse to bow, you expose how fragile the shared belief really is. And so they call you hard to approach, difficult, or not sociable, just to legalize their fear. Because you can't be controlled, you become a threat. You don't seek approval, because you've realized the crowd's approval isn't worth more than your inner wholeness. This trait is exactly why you are completely, thoroughly free. And true freedom is rarely loud. Before we go on, I want to slip in a small question. Gentle, as an invitation. Out of these 7 things, which one feels most like you? Or which one irritates you the most, as if it just touched a truth you've been avoiding? If you feel safe enough to share, leave a comment, an experience, or even just one line. Sometimes we don't need to agree to understand each other. We just need to be honest. Trait 4. The architect's obsession. The majority treats their existence like a waiting room, passively absorbing time. For the architect, time isn't a flow. It's a finite resource, a currency. And if you've lived long enough, you understand. The rarest luxury isn't money. It's attention. You're obsessed with a vision of what you could become, neuroscience confirms. The default mode network DMN of social rumination and the task-positive network TPN of deep focus cannot both operate at full power at the same time. Simply put, either you drift or you build. The craving for connection often hides a fear of facing oneself. Every hour you spend validating other people's mediocrity is an hour stolen directly from your future self. And sometimes you're not cold, you're just busy. Busy living what you know matters. The architect's metamorphosis cannot happen politely in a crowd. A caterpillar must dissolve completely inside the cocoon. If you're in that transformation stage, solitude isn't a burden. It's the sterile environment required for radical self-construction. And sterile is sometimes the only way something new can be born, without being infected by old expectations. Trait 5. The unconscious mirror. You're not just a person. You're a catalyst. And catalysts are rarely loved, because they make reactions happen. Individuals with high self-awareness and low social need function like a blank screen. You become the perfect surface for others to project their demons, failures, fears, and rejected desires. This is Jung's shadow, activated through projection. And when they see their own darkness through you, they do the easiest thing: blame you. Your controlled stillness forces them to hear, louder, the ugly and persistent inner static they've spent a lifetime trying to drown out. You say nothing, but your silence leaves them nowhere to hide. They hate you because your independence is a direct insult to their chronic dependency. You become an undeniable reminder of what they never dared to become. And sometimes, that hatred is simply regret in disguise. Most friendships aren't built on shared virtue, they're built on shared weakness. When you break that mutual eye contract, you're no longer a friend. You're the greatest threat to their psychological stability. You become the villain. And if you've ever been turned into the bad one, just because you refuse to play a fake game, you know that feeling. Being cast as the villain in the story of people failing inside self-deception is the highest compliment to your psychological capacity. It sounds harsh, but sometimes it's true. You cannot live honestly and still be loved by everyone. Trait 6. Time dissonance, the prophet. We live in an era obsessed with the present. Instant gratification is the masses' opiate. The herd is stuck in hyperbolic discounting. They trade a small, easy reward now for enormous power later, then wonder why life keeps repeating. But you, someone with high-level strategic thinking, are not a slave. You live in the future. You don't neglect the present. You simply don't let it hypnotize you. For you, the present is just a control point. You don't merely think about the future. You simulate it. Supreme power isn't controlling what's happening. It's controlling what will happen. And when you look far ahead, you'll be seen as distant, because you're not distracted by what distracts everyone else. Social connection feels nearly impossible, because your mind and theirs operate in different time zones. This is the isolation of the watchman. And the watchman is not comforted. The watchman is assigned responsibility. You stand on a solid wall while the city below sinks into the delirium of instant gratification. They hate you because you remind them of the price they're trying to avoid. This solitude gives you an unbeatable strategic advantage, the power of foresight. And foresight sometimes is nothing more than having the courage to look straight. Trait 7. The internal engine. Most people live like externally fueled engines. They crave praise and admiration. This is deep dependency, an ongoing need for narcissistic supply. And when they don't get it, they panic, as if they've lost their compass. You are different. You're rare, like a nuclear engine. Your fuel is internal. Satisfaction is the process, not the outcome. You don't need applause to keep moving. That difference gives you a terrifying strength. Immunity to society's strongest weapon, ostracism. And that immunity makes you no longer easy to steer. When they try to use that social blackmail on you, someone self-generated, the mechanism breaks. They say, "We'll ignore you." And your response isn't panic. It's calm indifference. "Good. I have work to do." You don't need noise to prove you're strong. Your steadiness is already the answer. When you don't need reflected light from others to define your worth, you automatically disable the entire machinery of social manipulation. You become a system glitch in their matrix of power. And glitches irritate people because they don't follow familiar rules. That autonomy is the foundation of absolute freedom. In a world run on parasitic energy, The self-sustaining entity is the most dangerous enemy. Your independence challenges the existing power structure. But remember, challenge here means challenging by living true, not by being aggressive. Even the strongest can be deceived by solitude. That's the psychological trap people who are raising their vibration often collapse into. It's a deeper bargain. And you can recognize it by one sign. You start to soften, not because you want to, but because you're tired. You deliberately lower your standards. You deliberately step back to feel the shallow warmth of social contact. And then you wonder why you feel emptier after you've had someone next to you. Trap 1. The Broken Project. You let a broken person, someone saturated with toxicity, enter your life. This isn't compassion. This is the search for narcissistic supply. Your shadow craves the feeling of being the hero. You accept their chaos as the price of companionship, even if it's negative companionship. And if you've ever saved someone until you forgot yourself, you know how sophisticated this trap is. Trap 2. The Return to the Herd. You pretend to be foolish, pretend to care about trivial things, just to ease the pressure of conformity bias. You put on the mask and perform a play of mediocrity. This is suicide for your higher self. And the death here isn't physical. It's the shrinking of self-respect. If you lower your frequency to match theirs, the frequency of fear and mediocrity, you won't find connection. You'll only find interference. The more you try to fit, the more you get lost. Carve this into your bones. The loneliness of the mask, the loneliness of playing someone you are not, inside a crowd that accepts you only for the role, is far heavier than the loneliness of the cave, where you can be honest with yourself. And many people spend their whole lives enduring the loneliness of the mask without ever naming it correctly. Don't compromise with emptiness. Accept the coldness of the peak. The peak isn't warm, but it's real. This laboratory isn't for hiding from the world. It's where you prepare to conquer it. The reason people fear solitude isn't because they lack friends. It's because they're terrified of facing the shadow they've tried to bury. And you are looking straight at it. This is your monk mode phase, a calculated retreat, a step back to see clearly, to reorganize, to return to your axis. Isolation has severed old bindings. Old social relationships are often not support. They're shackles, driven by the crab mentality. And if you've ever felt yourself being pulled down whenever you tried to rise, you've touched that mentality already. Now you possess what every great figure craves: time and silence. Two things we waste when we're young, and only later realize we've lost so much. Protocol 1. Radical acceptance of your standards. Remove the psychological noise surrounding your demands. Stop apologizing for the standards you set. Accept the hunger. Endure the temporary absence. Absence doesn't mean forever. It's only the space for what's right to arrive. This is the moment your shadow is tested. You don't eat garbage just because you're hungry. And if you listen closely, that line isn't only about friendship. It's about everything you allow into your life. People lower their standards out of fear of isolation. They confuse craving with necessity. They accept toxic relationships. That's weakness, equating hunger with what's proper. Sometimes people call it easygoing, but it's really self-abandonment. The moment you allow even 1 millimeter of compromise, you send a signal to your subconscious and the world. You're willing to accept less than your true value. Lowering standards becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You will live at the level of what you permit. In survival, one ally, one mind that truly understands the battlefield, is worth infinitely more than 10,000 unconscious civilians. Choose leverage over popularity. Choose quality over noise. Protocol 2. Signal strategy. Become the beacon. Chasing others is amateur behavior. It exposes scarcity and urgency. And in the kingdom of power, urgency has a scent. It signals weakness. When you chase, you unconsciously say, I need. When you stand firm, you say, I have. You find worthy people by becoming a beacon yourself. A lighthouse never leaves its place to swim around an island looking for ships. It stands still, and it emits light. And the light here isn't showmanship. It's clarity. You must build undeniable competence, an inner strength others cannot ignore. Building. Cross the threshold of mediocrity. Seriousness about your work is the clearest form of status signaling. Speaking your truth. Say what is true from your experience and vision. This becomes a sharp filter. Excellence. Become so excellent that your existence becomes social proof of your value. Your real tribe isn't in bars. They're busy building their own lighthouse. You must raise yourself to an altitude of skill, energy, and vision, where your signal can be detected. And then meeting them stops being searching and becomes fate at the same frequency. Don't run. Stand firm. Your excellence will create an irresistible gravity. And real gravity isn't loud. It quietly pulls what fits closer. Protocol 3. The Mask of Sanity. This is Machiavelli's foundational lesson, survival in hostile territory. And to be clear, this is a metaphor for psychological survival, how you hold your ground in environments that do not understand you. Don't make the fatal mistake of publicly revealing your inner architecture. The weak masses are instinctively programmed to identify and neutralize potential threats. Anything that rises too high must be cut down. And sometimes what they cut isn't you. It's your confidence. Your invisibility is your greatest asset, not because you're afraid, because you understand the value of discretion. Learn to wear the mask of sanity lightly. Politeness is social lubricant. It lets you move through crowds without friction. Kindness is excellent camouflage. You can be kind without selling yourself. Treat every social interaction as high-level spycraft. You are an undercover operative. Your mission is to survive and gather intelligence. And intelligence here can be as simple as who is real, who is fake, who respects you, who only wants to use you. Your shadow, your true ambitions, your unsatisfied thirst for power, your cold intelligence must be kept private. Power is protected by ambiguity. By letting the village believe you're ordinary and predictable, you deny them the ultimate weapon, knowledge. Some things, once others know them too early, they will interfere. When you conceal your intentions, you maintain information asymmetry. By keeping the blade sheathed, you ensure that when the moment comes, the strike will be completely unexpected and impossible to resist. And again, here this is metaphor. The blade is your competence. The strike is the decisive move in your life, when you act with preparation, not with talk. This synthesis doesn't create a failure. It creates something rare and far more dangerous. An exiled king, an apex predator in the psychological landscape. If these images make you flinch, understand them as symbolic language, describing a person who is self-governed, no longer easily dragged around. The reason you have few or no friends isn't because you're broken. It's proof of radical incompatibility. You didn't fail their training, you rejected its premise. And rejecting the premise is sometimes the bravest act of all. They don't hate you because you're weak. They fear you because you're unmanageable. You are the wolf. And the wolf here isn't brutality. It's independence. Your path is the path of meaning, and meaning demands a brutal price, all the comfort of the herd. Solitude is the mandatory tax you pay for freedom. It isn't pleasant, but it's fair. You pay in silence, you receive truth. Look at the empty chair across from you. It isn't simply empty, it's reserved. Reserved for loyalty. That empty chair is a ruthless filter. It filters out opportunists, users, people who only want to be near you when you're rising. And if you've ever been kept close when you were useful, then abandoned when you needed someone, you understand why that chair deserves respect. Don't confuse solitude with loneliness. You aren't lonely. You're simply the first one at the meeting point, the only one with enough psychological endurance to start the journey. And sometimes the one who arrives first will always have to wait, not because they're unlucky, but because they were ready early. Respect that empty chair. Never fill it with desperation or the need for validation, Because when you fill it out of desperation, you invite the wrong person. The ability to endure silence and solitude is the strongest sign of psychological stability and unshakable power. Only when you prove you don't need anyone to survive do the truly valuable people start wanting that seat beside you. And the most beautiful part is this: they won't come to fill you. They'll come to build with you. Still, vision at altitude is a double-edged blade. When you reach a new level, that clarity attracts a strong wind, the wind of resentment. They'll do whatever they can to pull you down, justifying their envy with hypocritical moral language. When it happens, don't doubt the path. Understand it as the reaction of people who haven't dared to climb. And that brings us to the final test, the power trap. The real test is managing and preserving that power without being corrupted by it. Power is an acid. It exposes the true bare nature of your soul. Complacency is the deadliest weakness. And if you've ever watched someone change when they finally got what they wanted, you know this isn't philosophy, it's observation. If you can't master power, you'll quickly become its victim, self-destructing through arrogance and carelessness. And this is where the experienced speak one quiet line. The hardest part isn't going up. It's staying intact once you're high. The real game begins when you have everything. Will you use that strength to build an empire, or to burn it with your own hands? That question redefines your nature. And if you want, carry that question with you for the next few days. You don't have to answer it now. Just let it sit there like a compass needle. Prepare yourself. The truth about power is always harsh and cold. But you're here, which means you're no longer afraid of the truth. And if you've made it all the way to this point, I want to ask one last thing. Softly. Who are you keeping your empty chair for? Or have you ever filled it out of fear? If you want to share, leave a comment. Your story might become a gentle answer for someone else listening in silence.